So, when we last left our heroine, I had just talked to Andre and worked out a deal to start my life at Sitting Rock Arabian Horse Farms. I was headed home in my gremlin with my dog Rowdy and so excited to tell my mom and especially my dad that I had a job and I would start tomorrow. So I get home and my mom says, "Man, I was so worried about you." And I said, "I know, but I knew what I was doing. It was a long day, but I'm back and I got the job." She goes, "You did?" And I go, "Yeah, I got the job starting tomorrow." And so I said, she goes, "That'll be great. Go wash up. Dinner will be in a little while. Your dad will be home. You can tell him." So I said, "Okay, great." So a little while, my dad came home and I told him I had this job working at this horse farm, and he looked at me. I'm not sure to this day what the look was, and he said, "Okay." And we had dinner, and that was that. And I got up at 6 o'clock the next morning, and I headed back to Sitting Rock Arabian Farms. So I got there about 6:45. Now, all the girls were coming back from breakfast. Seems they get up at 5:30, feed the horses. Then they take an hour, go to breakfast at PM truck stop, and back at 7. So they were just coming in, and Andre came down and he said, "Okay." He takes me over to the breeding aisle where the biggest stalls were 16 by 16 and huge. And I think I want to say there were 8, if I remember correctly. And on the other stalls, there was 12 on either side. So 24 to an aisle, except my side, which it only had 8. And on the right side of that aisle was the office, the storage room, the washroom where they washed all the blankets, and a little bit of room to store some equipment. And so he said, "You get shovel, you get wheelbarrow, and you start to clean these stalls. All these stalls, they need to be stripped all the way to the bottom. And because we're getting ready to bring the foals in, and when we bring the foals in, everything must be clean." So he told me what to do, and I took a deep breath, and I took my wheelbarrow, and I rolled it into an empty stall, and I just started shoveling. And those shovels were heavy. They were wet and disgusting and everything. But I was determined to make a really good first impression, because I wanted to be there. I wanted to learn about the horses. I wanted to have a place to stay. I wanted to prove myself. And so I started cleaning the stalls, and when I would get the wheelbarrow full, I went around the corner and I asked the girls, "Where do you dump the wheelbarrow?" And they said, "Out back in the truck." And I went out back, and there was a truck, like a dump truck, but not quite. It was more flat in the back, and it was backed up to the loading dock, and it was almost even with the loading dock, and you could just walk up to the loading dock and flip the wheelbarrow and dump the stuff in there. And that's exactly what I did. And then I was leaving, one of the other girls came out and she goes, "No, that's not the way we do it. You have to roll into the truck, go all the way up to the front, and fill up the front first, and then we work our way back." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." And she said, "It's okay. Don't do it again." And I said, "Okay." So for the rest of the morning, that's what I did. All the girls were cleaning stalls, and I was cleaning stall. and I would take it out and I would roll it all the way to the front of the truck and dump it, and it's getting fuller and higher until finally they lay this board in there, and I would say it was about as wide as a 2x6, and it was, I'd say the truck was, I don't know, maybe 15, 16 feet deep, and this board went almost all the way to the back. And so when I came out, there was a whole group of girls standing around, and they said, okay, you got to roll the wheelbarrow out that and then dump it. And they were all just standing around, and I was thinking, okay, it's a spectator sport. And so I went over and I kind of eyed it, and I started up, and it was really hard because it was kind of uphill, and this wheelbarrow weighed more than I did, and you had to balance the wheelbarrow on the 2x6, and then you had to either stay on the 2x6 with your feet or you had to straddle it, and it was not an easy time. So I backed back up, and then I backed up a little bit more, and I got a run and go. And I took off up that board as fast as I could go. And I think I got about 3/4 of the way. And it got a little bit off. And it flipped. And me and the wheelbarrow and everything went into the big pile of shit. And I got up. And I was brushing myself off. And all the girls were laughing their asses off. And they just thought it was so funny. And I realized then that it was, it was just part of the new start. And later I would find out that they do it to all the girls when their first day. But everybody else mastered the board. They'd been doing it a while. They could roll right up to the top, and they could push the wheelbarrow over. And it took me a few days, but I mastered it as well. So came back in, and it was lunchtime. And so everybody was going to go to lunch, and they looked at me and they said, did you bring anything for lunch? And I said, no. And they said, well, we eat up P&M. Did you bring any money? I said, no. And they said, well, we'll get you some coupons. And I said, okay. So somebody went and came back a few minutes later, and they handed me a coupon, and it said lunch, $1.75. Now, believe it or not, you could buy a lunch for $1.75 back then. So we all went off to P&M truck stop. We had an hour and a half for lunch, and you picked out what you wanted, and then you handed them the coupon, and apparently Sitting Rock collected the coupons at the end of the month and paid them what they owed them. And so we had lunch. I think I had a burger, and then they passed around a Texas Pete pepper from off of the table, out of the Texas Pete thing, and wanted to know if anybody was brave enough to put it in their mouth, and I said I would. And I think I held it for maybe 4 or 5 seconds. I was pretty proud of myself. And then I was like, whoa, that's hot. So earned a few kudos there with the girls. Learned everybody's name, and didn't really feel like I belonged yet. But I thought, yeah, I could get along with these people. And went back, and I finished cleaning the stalls. And I want to say it's probably about 2 o'clock when Andre came down, and he showed me how to sweep the breezeway, and they had a special way that they did it, and it took me about an hour to do that. And then he said if I run out of things to do, I should wash all the buckets out, and I did that. And then it was about 5 o'clock or 5:30, and it was time to feed the horses again. And because I wasn't there in the morning, I didn't know the routine. The girls showed me. They had this big cart on wheels, and they rolled it out to the back of a feed trailer which was full of horse feed. They used to buy the horse feed by the trailer load. And we reached in there and we got, I don't know, 6 bags of feed and dumped them into that wagon, and that made that wagon really heavy. And then we started at the first row, and every horse had a thing on its sign on its door that said its name, how old it was, and how much feed it got for breakfast, and how much feed it got in the evening, and if it got a lunch feed, because some of them got lunch feed. So the girls started doing that, and then they told me that I could do the hay, and I should just give the horses a flake or 2 of hay. They showed me how thick it should be, and so I had a cart with a couple of bales of hay on it and a knife, and I cut the hay bales and went from stall to stall after the girls and put hay in the hay racks, and some didn't have hay racks, so we put the hay on the ground in the corner, and we did all that, and then we picked out the stalls, which was a lot easier than the evening. I didn't have any to pick out because there wasn't anybody on my row. They were all empty stalls, so the girls called me over to help them, which was fine. And then we went to dinner, and after we ate, I went home. We were done. So I left from P&M truck stop, and I went home. And it was the 23rd of December. And so then, the next day, which was Christmas Eve, I got up. It was a rinse and repeat, did the same thing. They let everybody off early. I think we got done at like 3 o'clock. And so I went home and really excited about getting to spend a Christmas with my mom and dad, because I would be the only kid this year because everybody else had gone away. And I had asked for one gift, and it was an electronic detective game. And back then there weren't many electronic games. This was a board game, and it came with some kind of electric thing that you would ask it questions and it would answer you or something. I can't remember exactly how it worked, but the biggest reason I wanted it was because I thought I could interest my dad enough to play it, because he liked detective stuff. And so that night after dinner and after everybody fell asleep, like 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up and I went to see if I could find my gift. And it wasn't under the tree yet, because my mom was notorious for getting up early. And I said, well, where could they hide it? I've looked everywhere else in the house, so I thought it might be in my dad's trunk. So I literally went out to my dad's car very carefully, opened the trunk, and sure enough, there was a present wrapped with my name on it, and it was just the right size to be the detective game. I didn't open it, although in past years I had opened corners of presents to find out what they were and taped them back. And to me, it was almost as fun as Christmas, just going and finding your gifts and finding out what they were, and then acting on the day of Christmas like you were just so surprised. And it was good. The next morning, Christmas morning, we had breakfast and we opened some gifts. I'd got my mom and dad a couple of little things, and when I opened the detective game and I showed it to my dad and I said, you want to play? And believe it or not, he said yes. And we played 2 or 3 games. It was really nice. Don't remember who won. I just remember that we played, and I just thought that was so cool. We had a wonderful Christmas. My mom made a great meal, and it was just a really good Christmas, just the 3 of us, and I was feeling pretty good about everything. So I ended up going to bed really happy. And I had packed some things because tomorrow when I left, I wouldn't be coming back. Maybe on the weekends. And so I had packed up a bunch of things. And the hardest thing to do was to leave my little dog behind, because I couldn't have the dog out there. So that was going to be hard. Being away from my dog a week at a time was going to be really tough. I had never done that. And she'd been with me since I was 8 years old. And so that was really hard. But I was growing up, and it was time to go back to Sitting Rock Arabian Farms and start my new life. Thanks for listening to part 3, the beginning. Look for us in a day or two. Sorry this one was a little late, but life gets a little crazy, and I'm trying to be diligent about getting this story out. Hope you're enjoying it, and if you watched it, thank you so much. Be sure and share it, and subscribe if you haven't already. Help an old girl out, and like it. Thanks a lot. See you in a day or two. Bye-bye.